Of ways. I think I named five different ways you can solve a quadratic. You can solve them by graphing, you can solve them by factoring, you can solve them by taking square roots, you can solve them by completing the square, you can solve them by using the quadratic formula. The only one of those methods that works on every single quadratic is the quadratic formula. All the rest of them, sometimes it's better to factor, sometimes it's better to do square roots. It just depends on the type of problem. So that's going to be the goal as we go throughout the week, is to learn, after we learn all the methods, when's it better to use which one? Okay, that type of thing. But today we're going to do square roots and factoring. Factoring is what he did mostly on the video yesterday. Alright, I've got 4x squared minus 31 is equal to 9. Okay, the directions for this say solve the quadratic. Just a reminder, what you're doing when you solve the quadratic is you're finding where it crosses the x-axis. It's a parabola. So you're looking for the places you're finding where this would cross the x-axis. So it could possibly have two answers, because that one would cross it twice. It could possibly have one answer, or it could have no real answers. Okay, so that's the possibilities that we're dealing with. Alright, standard form of a quadratic we know is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so I've got a squared in this one, but I don't have an x to the first, right? Everybody see that? There's no plain no x in here anywhere, right? So there's no b. So when there is no b, using square roots is the easiest thing to do. So that's why we're going to use square roots on this one. So I'm just basically want to do some 8th grade algebra here and solve this for x, because there's no b. So I'm just solving it for x. So what would my first step be to get the x all by itself?
Plus 31.
Boy, Trevor's back on a chair.
Yeah, she almost said girl.
Almost said what?
Girl.
Oh no. 4x squared would be 40. Okay, now what?
Divide by 4.
So that gets us,
I don't know, we get calculator.
you don't know what 40 divided by 4 is?
Thank you,
Chloe.
Trevor.
Okay.
This calculator don't even know, it's not even working.
Okay, done. Alright, now what? My x is being squared. How do you undo a squared?
Square root 10.
Square root it, right? A square root would undo a squared. So we're going to have to find out, and alright, why did I put a plus or minus sign out in front of that
You don't
square?
know what it is.
I don't know. Okay, we gotta remember some stuff about some squares. What is, this is just a side note, trying to help you figure out why I put a plus minus there. What is 2 squared? 2 is 2. What is negative 2 squared? Same thing. So when you square something, it could be positive or negative, right? So anytime we take the square root of something, we got to be positive or negative. Okay, now, we're done. That's our answer. This crosses the parabola, this crosses the x-axis 2 times. It does it at the positive square root of 10 and the negative square root of 10. That's it. There's nothing else you can do there. Now this is where some people struggle with this, because that wasn't very hard. Some people struggle with that square root of 10, because we're going to leave our answers most of the time in radical form. That means underneath the square root symbol. Because if you don't, and it's not a perfect square, it's just an approximation, because you have to round it somewhere. If you hit square root of 10 on your calculator right now, it's going to tell you 3 point something.
Yeah, it's like 3.1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that even keeps going forever. Your calculator just ran out of room. So if we're told to give the exact answer, we have to do this. If we put that 3 point whatever, we've rounded. That's not exact. Okay? Now, sometimes what's underneath that radical can simplify. So I got to ask myself, can the square root of 10 simplify? When it can is when it has a perfect square that'll go into it. Perfect squares. What are some perfect squares? 1 squared's 1, 2 squared's 4, 3 squared's 9, 4 squared's 16, 5 squared's 25, 6 squared's 36, and you can keep going. Will any of these, other than 1 goes into everything, will any of these go evenly into 10?
No.
Nope, so that's it. If one of them did, and we'll see one in a second that does, we would have a couple more steps to go. But that was just basic algebra stuff there. That wasn't very hard, right?
Simple.
Simple dimple. Everybody's good.
Remember Judas Flagg did a good job, but I don't think it was right in the drawing, I guess. It's a pretty flag, but it ain't right in the drawing. I think it was.
Last year somebody had to pay for a table because they carved their initials on it.
For real?
Yeah, the what?
Paid for it.
How much are these tables? Like
It was
70
like,
bucks?
no, it was like $51.50 or something like that.
Did they get to take on the table that they carved the name in?
They did, but they shouldn't have. They shouldn't, because then the school has bought an extra table and we don't have it anymore. We could like used it for something.
Well, if they had to pay for it, then shouldn't they get it?
No, because they should be punished.
What'd they do with the old table?
But they had to pay
That's
for
what
it.
he's asking. The person that did it got to take it home.
For real? Yeah, that's good.
No, not for the
Well,
school.
they paid for it.
Well, but so there's no punishment involved. It's like, well, they bought a table. There should be punishment. They should have to replace the one that they screwed up, and then they're punished. And
You
don't
could
get
just
it.
sand that initials out of it.
All right.
You could clear coat it or something.
I'd be mad if I bought the table and didn't get to bring it home.
Well, but that's what you get for carving in it. I mean,
Well, they could just make it like where you have to buy the new table and you can take down home and you get like EMD or something.
We use these at the stadium.
That'd be fun.
all right. We got 3x squared plus 9 is equal to 0.
Are we just doing the same thing on all these?
So far, yes. 3x squared plus 9 is equal to 0. So what we need to notice, it's just like last time, there's no b.
-9.
When there's no b, Trevor's right, we're just going to start solving them for x. So you're going to move that 9 over. So this
Divide by
one will give us 3x squared is equal to negative 9. And then we would divide by 3. And x squared is equal to negative 3. Then we would undo a squared by square rooting. Positive or negative square root of negative 3. Now, slam the brakes on.
9.
No. Good, Dalton. You can't take a negative square root yet. Yet. So for right now, since we've got a negative underneath that square root, we're going to say there are no real solutions. And notice I'm emphasizing real because later in this week, we're going to learn about imaginary numbers. This has imaginary solutions. Okay, anytime you've got a negative underneath the radical, there's imaginary. But for right now, we get off the hook by just having to say there are no real solutions. Okay, can't take a negative. If you try to do a negative of a square root in your calculator, it'll say error or something like that.
Why don't the calculator know about
It
fake numbers?
It does. In mode, you can go and find it, but you have to like set it for that. So
Oh, are you going to do that for us?
maybe.
Hope so.
Alright, one more of these. Look, this one looks a little more complicated. I've got 2/5
Ooh.
times x plus 3 squared is equal to 5. Alright, so still doing the same thing. We're still going to solve this algebraically for x. So I'm trying to get the x all by itself. What makes sense? What would be the first thing to try to do?
2/5
Can you
times
distribute?
3.
Yeah.
Okay, I could distribute, but I don't want to. I want to save myself a little bit of time and just get rid of that 2/5.
So divide by 2.
So we'll just divide by 2/5 on both sides. So we're going to divide by 2/5 and divide by 2/5. So it cancels out over here. Just got x plus 3 squared is equal to, now when I do 5 divided, good Trevor, when I do 5 divided by 2/5, that's the same as 5 times 5 halves. Remember, you multiply by the reciprocal. So that's 25 over 2.
Can you put it in decimal?
You can, but that's going to make your life harder when we do the square root in just a second.
So now do we just minus 3?
No, not yet, because that 3 is in a parentheses. It's being squared. So we need to get rid of the squared first here.
So you got squared.
So we got square rooted. Okay, so this is going to be, we're square rooting both sides. This is going to be x plus 3 is equal to the positive or negative square root of 25 over 2. Now we're going to do some work on this one. So just hold on for a second. Let's finish getting the x all by itself first. What would our last step be to get the x all by itself?
Subtract by, oh wait, no.
You were right.
Subtract by 3?
Good, subtract the 3. Now, when I write this, the 3 that I'm subtracting needs to go first, so make yourself a habit of that. Okay, I'm not circling that because we're not done. This one's got some extra work to do. We know that that fraction that's being square rooted, we know the top number, the numerator, is a perfect square, right? So we're going to have that. When we're square rooting a fraction, you take the square root of the numerator and the square root of the denominator. Okay, that's what it means when the whole thing's underneath the radical. You know the square root of 25 is 5. 5 times 5 makes 25. What about the square root of 2? Does something times itself equal 2? No, it's not a perfect square. It's not one of the ones that we listed a while ago. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, not 2. Here's the dilemma. Remember this from Algebra 1. You can't leave a radical on bottom of a fraction. Okay? I don't know why I wasn't at the math party when the math people made up the rules, but that's a big rule. You can't
Who
leave.
do you think made up all these goofy rules?
I don't know. Can't leave a radical on
Who
bottom.
makes the alphabet with the number system?
So what we got to do is get rid of a square root of 2 on bottom. Okay? How can I get rid of a square root of 2? What would make the radical go away? If I could make 2 turn into a perfect square, the radical will go away, right?
Multiply.
What times what?
2.
Good, Dalton. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 will make that a perfect square, right? Whatever I do on bottom, I have to do on top. Okay? Here's how Dalton, what Dalton knew on the bottom. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which is 2.
Our answer's 2.
No?
No.
That's just the denominator. Okay, remember we had whatever you do on bottom, you had to do on top. So on the top, I've got 5 times the square root of 2. Well, what's 5 times the square root of 2?
Sure.
It's just 5 times the square root of 2, right? I don't know. Can I leave that as my answer?
No.
Yes. You can have a radical on top. It's on bottom where you can't have it. So the only thing this takes the place of that, right? So I just got to rewrite my answer now, all nice and prettied up. So we've got, for our final answer, pick a marker, x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus 5 square roots of 2 over 2. Okay, did you get that? Shh. Everybody good there?
What? Oh, yeah.
Now what you need to keep in mind is that plus or minus means those are 2 points, 2 places. Okay? It would be, if you wanted to write them out both ways, it's negative 3 plus 5 square roots of 2 over 2 and negative 3 minus 5 square roots of 2 over 2. Okay, so there actually are 2 answers to that. We just make ourselves look smarter by using the fancy plus minus symbol. Sometimes we try to trick people and make them think we're smart. Alright, let's look at some factoring. How about that? Great idea. Thanks. Came up with that. I got what you need there?
No.
You got it, Landon.
I don't even like walking from my
I texted the Perryville coach Molly and told him that we had people running cross country that day, so we wanted to play the latest first round game we could. So he said that. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll still be, but it will give you a better chance, you know.
When is it? Oh, that.
Next Saturday,
Yeah.
we have a tournament and they've got a cross country meet.
Who was it?
Okay, look at this. X squared minus 4x equals 45. The first thing I need for you to notice is that this one has a b. 4x, right? Negative 4 is the b. So we can't just solve it algebraically by doing square roots like we have been. So we need to write this dude in standard form. What would we have to do to get it in standard form? Good, Stephen. We got to move that 45 over. Standard form always sets it equal to 0. So I'm going to have x squared minus 4x minus 45. And then you can put equal 0. You don't have to. Doesn't matter. Okay. So what we're going to look at now, since we do have a b, we can't do the same method that we did previously. So we're going to factor this. Okay. We're going to solve by factoring. Rule for this when you're factoring, and he did it, Funny Pants on Yay Math did it a little bit different than the way I'm going to say it. You always have to take what's in your A spot times what's in your C spot. This time, in all the problems he worked on the video yesterday, it was a coincidence the A's 1, right? So we got 1 times negative 45. So I need the factors of negative 45 that add to what's in my B spot. Okay, I'm going to list them all this time so you see what we're doing, but I won't do this every time. I could have 1 times negative 45. Y'all are right. I could have negative 1 times 45. I could have 5 times negative 9. I could have negative 5 times 9. I missed 3, didn't I? I could have 3 times negative 15. I could have negative 3 times 15. Is there any other whole numbers that multiply to make 45? I don't think so. Okay, so I'm looking for now the sum of these to equal negative 4. Okay, so if I add those, that gets me negative 44. That's no good. If I add those, that gets me 44. I add these, 5 and negative 9, that's negative 4. Ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner. And I'm encouraged that several of y'all said that before I started. So that means you do remember a little bit about factoring. Okay, so that factor a trinomial, it's going to be the 2 binomials. To get an x squared, you got to have an x and an x. And then these factors that you just found fills in the rest of it. I've got one that's got a positive 5, and I got one that's got a negative 9. Okay? That's my factored form. Now, like we saw in the video yesterday, we're supposed to be solving this. We just have to set each of those factors equal to 0 and solve. Most of you can do it without writing it down. You know they're just going to be the opposite signs, but I'll work it out because I'm supposed to show my work. X plus 5 equals 0. Gets me a negative 5. And x minus 9 equals 0. Gets me a positive 9. So this parabola has 2 answers, negative 5 and 9. That is my favorite way to solve them, but it doesn't work every time.
That is so easy to understand. I did not I feel like he did it the same way, but I still didn't understand what he was saying. And I don't know. I feel like he got off fast a lot. It was so much easier to just pay attention.
Good. Good. He did. His class is crazy, so he does get up and start telling stupid jokes. He does. Yeah, well, I don't think since it's published, I don't think, he can.
Unless he gets their parents' permission.
Right.
Wait, so can you say our name?
I do. I'm not real sure. I mean, I only have 20 subscribers and they're all y'all. He's got like thousands and it's nationwide. So his situation's a little bit different. And y'all have also, when y'all signed your handbook forms, signed stuff about being able to, I mean, I can't like put it on your face and, show you. But, we're good. Okay, now, what if the A is not 1? That's when factoring gets a little bit more difficult. Not too bad, but just it adds another step. So let's look at one of these. I've got 2x squared minus 11x plus 12 is equal to 0. Okay? He did tell you in the video, and it's true, you always have to look for a GCF first. But this one doesn't have one because 11's prime, so 2 can't go into 11. So don't have a GCF. Okay? For the last problem, the first thing I did after that was I did A times C, but this time my A is not 1. So I got 2 times 12, which is 24. Okay, I need the factors of 24. Guys, y'all pay attention. That adds to negative 11. Anybody know them, or do I need to start listing? Okay.
4 and 6.
That would get 10.
No, it would be
Oh, yeah, it would be 10.
Oh, wait, we're supposed to, I thought she was saying like multiplying.
They got to multiply to make positive 24, and they got to add to make negative 11.
That's 10. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but they do
3 and 8.
Okay, 3 and 8. Good. 3 times 8 is 24, but 3 plus 8 is a positive 11. So what do I need to do to my 3 and 8? Good, Molly. Make them both negatives. Negative times a negative is a positive 24. Negative 3 plus negative 8 is negative 11. Now, we got a dilemma, though. On the last problem, I just wrote my 2 parentheses and put an x and an x, but this one's got a 2x squared. Okay, this is what I was telling you makes the process a little bit longer. When your a is not 1, you have to do what's called factoring by grouping. So we're going to take these factors and we're going to plug them in here for the negative 11. So I'm going to write 2x squared. And it doesn't always matter what order you put them in. I think if I switch the order and if I put the negative 8 first so it's closer to the 2, that would help me because 2 and 3 don't have anything in common. So I'm going to switch the order and write minus 8x and then minus 3x. And then I got my plus 12 is equal to 0. Okay, all we did, I switched the order. I put the 8 first and the 3 second. I took my factors and I substituted them in for the negative 11. Because it's still the same. Negative 8 minus 3 is negative 11. Okay, so I told you this is factoring by grouping. We're going to now break this polynomial that has 4 parts into 2's. Just like we're going in the arc, 2 by 2. Factoring by grouping. Okay, now you're probably going to see why I wanted to put the 8 first. Look at that first group that I made. Is there a GCF in that? Greatest common factor, 2x squared minus 8x. What's the biggest thing that will go evenly into both of those?
4. 2.
2, good, Dalton. And what else? Don't they both have an x in common also? So I'm going to divide that first parentheses by its GCF of 2x. Okay, it was a 2x squared here. I took out 2x. What's left? X minus, it was an 8x. I took out 2x. What's left?
4.
4. Okay. All right, now over to my next group. What's the GCF of 3x and 12?
3.
It's just a 3, but here's the deal. Whatever I get in this parentheses, I need to get the same thing when I take something out here. So instead of taking a 3 out to get a negative 4, I need to take a negative 3 out. Okay, because negative 3x divided by negative 3 makes a positive x. 12 divided by negative 3 makes a negative 4. Factoring by grouping takes a little bit longer, but you're just about there. Now we're looking for the GCF of this big line where my mouse is hovering. They both have an x minus 4, right? So I'm going to take an x minus 4 out. That left me with a 2x minus 3. Now you're done factoring. When do I have to go through this longer process? When my a is not 1. Okay, my a is 1, I'm already done. I put it in overdrive and hit the gas and we're done. But my a wasn't 1, so I do the longer process. Now I still haven't solved yet, Dalton.
Is the A usually 1?
More times than not, yes. I still haven't solved yet, so we need to set both of these equal to 0 and solve. X minus 4 equals 0 gets us a 4. Now on the 2x minus 3 equals 0, I'm going to get a fraction or decimal on it, aren't I? Add my 3. 2x is 3. Divide by 2. 1.5. So we had 1.5 and 4. That's it.
Do you have to write it like that, or can you just write it like x equals both of them?
Yeah, you can do that. That's fine. Like what Jody's saying is right here, she just circled those answers. That's fine. All right, go. Landon's got it. Alright, here I've got x, bless you, x squared plus 12x plus 35 is equal to 0. Okay, you're fixing to try this one for me. And I'm being nice. It's a 1 in the A spot, so you don't have to do that grouping that we just did. This will be like the problem before it. Okay? Everybody know where you're starting? Everybody good? Try and see if you can find it. It's got 2 answers. Go.
Oh gosh.
This one shouldn't take too long. It's a pretty good one. Check with your huddles, your table buddies there. Ask your huddles how they're doing.
So like negative 7 minutes off?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I I'm
Does
sorry.
it matter which order you wrote it in?
I try to put mine in numerical order, smallest to biggest, but that doesn't make it any better. That's just what I always try to do. You know that's where it crosses the x-axis and everything. Ow!
Huh? Yes. And then we'll go back and start chewing on the thing. Yeah, chewing on it there. And she'll be like, you know someone else is not been on there. I'm like, well, mine's been on there all night, so I mean, I might as well just be chewing on it.
All right, what did you get for your A times C? 35. I need the factors of 35 that add to 12.
7 and 5.
7 and 5. I did 1 times 35, A times C. Well, we did on the last two. Okay, so I needed the factors of 35 that added to my B, which was 12. So Stephen had those 7 and 5. So since this is a 1A, I don't have to do the grouping stuff. This is just short and sweet. I got an x plus 7 and an x plus 5. Doesn't matter what order they go in. Can be either way. Set them both equal to 0 and solve.
Do you have to solve?
Well, you have to solve, but you don't have to show that step.
Okay.
I mean, your answers need to be -7 and -5, but you don't have to show that step. You're right.
Okay.
Okay? Everybody good? Alright, look at this one. This is one of my favorite problems here. I've got f of x is equal to x squared minus 8x. F of x is equal to x squared minus 8x. The problem says find the zeros. Okay, find the zeros. Remember I told you yesterday, zeros, roots, solutions, it's all the same thing. So not doing anything different here. Also put this one, got an f of x. That's okay. Still not doing anything different. There is a b. Your b's -8, so you can't just move that over and solve algebraically. So it has to be by factoring, because that's the only other way we've learned so far. But how do I factor it when there's only 2 pieces? Good, Jody. It's got a GCF of x. Both of those pieces have an x, right? So we're going to factor an x out. If I was x squared and I took an x out, what's left? X minus, it was 8x, I took an x out, what's left? 8, good. Now I've got 2 factors. So just like we did before, I set both those factors equal to 0 and solve. This is so easy because x equals 0. There's one answer. And then x minus 8 equals 0. There's your other answer. I like those kind.
Yeah.
Nothing to that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Easy way.
We never got to do that. Well,
We made our own projects.
oh, okay. We did, yeah, we did that. What we did ours was, our project was we would test like different types of pins and see which one streaked or which one stayed longer. Yeah, that's what ours was.
Ours was coding. Either
We did it off range on range, or pins, and whichever one shoot the furthest, and whichever one didn't, and then we did whichever one was like, we got to pick away, whichever one stayed on the paper or went off, like went all the way off, you know? It was cool. I forgot which, like that was ours that we made on the news. I don't know which one we did, because we had to switch to.
All right, got 4 problems for you. Solve. That's my directions on all 4 of those. Solve. Excuse me. Number 1 says x squared equals 144.
We gotta do all those?
All 4 of them, Landon. Number 2 says z minus 6 squared equals 25.
I didn't have any first.
Number 3 says 0 equals x squared plus 6x plus 9.
You didn't score.
Number 4, g of x equals x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay? 1 and 2 is what we started off with, doing square roots. 3 and 4 is factory. So try those, get all 4 of those done. Let's go, let's go.
That's the only. Is that a Z?
Yeah.
The first one only has one answer, right?
Well, no, Dalton. My bad. Technically that's 2 because the plus minus.
Zero?
Wait, are we do you do well, no, never mind.
Right, Connor. Right.
That's it?
You should have just started
So if you just leave it before, you just do the square.
So just x equals 12, right? That's it?
That's one of the answers. What's the other one?
0.
Remember when you square root, you make plus minus.
So you can just do the plus minus?
Yeah.
Wait, do we do plus minus square root of 12 or just 12?
Just 12. Because the square root of 144 is 12.
Is it
Right?
still A times C on all of them?
On the last 2. The first 2, you're just doing square roots.
Oh.
Hey, y'all settle up here. It needs some help landing out.
Yeah.
I didn't need to undo that square.
You gotta square the 140.
Top right is the way I was counting.
Which one is number 2?
What's the square root of
It's
25?
the z minus 6.
Positive or negative. So you got z minus 6 equals positive or negative 5. Right?
Yeah.
Then you need to move the 6 over. So you got to do 5 plus 6 and negative 5 plus 6.
Oh dang, we
Well,
have
you
to do
have
all
to
that
have 2
extra
answers.
stuff to
You
do
have to
this.
have
I mean, no, they're both A's or one of them.
You got confused.
If you want to foil it, then you that's
That one, that's what I was
from
going to
here.
do.
You have to factor.
Did you get z
11.
minus 6?
Factors of 36 and then negative 12.
Okay, so you square your z minus
Square root
6,
no
and
square.
then you square root your 25.
So you
I
get
got
5.
5.
That's not a
Oh,
two.
yeah.
That's a Z. Alright, so you square root the
No,
25, which
it would
gives you
here
5.
be z minus
Negative
6
and
is 5.
positive.
And then
So
z
you
minus
negative,
6
so
was
you have to do
negative 5.
2 times. You do 25 plus 6
Okay, what?
and
That's
25
close.
minus.
She'll help you.
It's 5 plus
Yeah,
six.
5 plus 6 and negative 5 plus 6. Same thing.
Okay, you.
But it's 11.
I don't know which way.
Negative 6 and negative 6.
You asked me. Yeah. Because you
All
get 2
you
points.
did?
Plus 6. Yeah, maybe 5 plus 6. Gives you 11 points.
Yeah. Wait.
Oh,
Negative
I see what I did wrong. I did something.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Okay,
It's
well, the
11.
first one,
You were right, subtracting that 25.
Plus 6.
Now, what is
You have to do it
36
negative
minus
5.
okay, and then you're subtracting
So
6.
that's,
Oh.
instead of the factors of negative 6, you need the factors of
You have to square root it. That's how you get rid of it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That was my
Yeah,
fault.
right.
It's not, 'cause I forgot. It's the factors of 11 that negative 12.
Equals
So
11.
He's still on number 2 at the very beginning.
How? We just did the whole
We
problem.
just did the whole problem. Come on,
I think it's wrong. I know it's not. I know, but
Yeah, you
That was
square
my
root
fault.
that
I think
that-
25 and 25, and then you do
Why
the
did you do
problem.
it twice?
Because you
Why
got
did you
the
do it
positive.
why did we do it twice? Because
The square root of 25 can be 5 or negative.
No, don't tell me. I want to figure it out on my own. So, is 0 A, or do you go to the x2?
No, that's in the right form. On number 3.
Yeah, you don't have to change
You don't have to change anything on number
Okay,
2.
so your A's 1, no, your A's 1, because
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
what
1
I
x
was
squared.
asking.
So you got 1 times 9 is 9. What can you multiply that makes 9, but add that makes 6?
3 and 3 and 3.
Wait, what's that?
You
Trevor.
can add 3 and get
I didn't want to know.
Let me, Landon, look here, Landon.
No.
What we're doing, 1 times 9, so it's got to multiply to make 9 and add to make the middle number. That's what you're looking for. So you could be 1 times 9, but that doesn't add to make 6. You could be 3 times 3.
Oh,
That adds to make 6. Okay, show him how to write that now that he knows those. Dalton and Gabe, y'all help him know what to write now.
So after G of X, do you work it out like the way?
What number are you on? Yes, factor.
Same thing?
Yes.
so on the one where it's the x squared plus 6x. Okay, so it would just be x equals 3. Oh, but you can do it both ways. You just need the same.
fall.
He can't just do these verses.
Yeah.
I never sleep in soaks. You're supposed
Yeah,
to
no, it's-
let your feet air out at night time.
Yeah.
You sleep in soaks, Coach, right?
No,
You're supposed to let your feet air out, right?
I guess I just don't sleep in socks.
Yeah.
Makes me hotter. I like to be cool.
I'm freezing night. I got 2 ceiling fans running.
I got 2. I got 2 fairs.
I think you sleep on the
I
bed.
got air conditioning. No, I got 3 because I got my ceiling fan. I have to have mine cold.
I got 3.
3 fans on
Alright, only had to do one thing to get number 1 right. What was the one thing you had to do?
Square.
on this one.
Square root it.
Square root.
Okay, good. Well, not really. Square root, shh. Now make sure when you do that square root that Dalton and Trevor said, you remember it can be plus or minus. Good job. So that does have 2 answers. Positive 12 and negative 12. Okay, that tells me that's a pretty wide parabola if it's going to cross at positive 12 and negative 12, right?
Yeah.
Pretty wide. Okay, now on the second one up here on the top right, Stephen wrote the z minus 6 out twice and foiled it and did it by factoring. So you could have done that. I didn't think of that when I wrote it. I just figured you would undo the squared by square rooting. So that's the way I'm going to go ahead and do it now. Be z minus 6 equals positive or negative 5. Now, one of the things I was talking to the girls over here about, when I solved this by adding 6, that's a positive and a negative 5. So I have to add 6 to both of those. So I got to do z equals my positive 5 plus 6, and z equals my negative 5 plus 6, right? So, and Stephen had both of those answers, 11 and 1.
Yes, sir. We got that.
Yes, sir, Trevor.
Okay? I was working with Landon on number 3, so I already had my a times c there. I was looking for the factors of 9 that added to 6, so Landon chose those. So we would have x plus 3 times x plus 3. When you set those equal to 0, that's the same thing, isn't it? So you're going to get the same thing twice, so it's just going to hit one time. Okay, that would be a parabola that would have its vertex on negative 3. That's what that would look like. Okay, what about the last one? What factors of 8 add to 6? 2 and 4, so we got x plus 2 times x plus 4. It was nice. Both of those had A's of 1, so you didn't have to do the grouping. Set both of those equal to 0, gets me a -2 and a -4. Alright, how you feel on that?
Explain how you got the -2 and -4.
When I take these factors, my mouse just went down.
Oh, you just change it?
Yeah, well, I set them equal to 0 and solve. So x plus 2 equals 0. So you
So-
subtract it. Yes.
Alright, I got you now.
All right. Plan tomorrow is to have an assignment over this.
A big one? Like
Not
a
a
paper?
big one. Yeah.
They
it's
don't
on-
raise my grade?
yeah.
Good.
I did have it printed out to give you as homework, but I think we're going to do it in class tomorrow. Is that all right?
Does anyone want any fan cloth? I'm selling it.